Nena Erb is one of the editors for the new HBO Max show Generation. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Nina. And to start off, this is a show that is very specifically about Gen Z,
Oh,
which certainly has its own way of looking at the world. How do you think you were able to reflect that in the editing of the show?
this was something that we discussed in the interview process, actually. And I was so excited to be a part of this because it's a show about so many underrepresented voices. And you don't see that a lot. So when I got my first day of dailies, I was very excited to see like the cameras were never, ever, ever locked off. It was always moving, a little frenetic, and sometimes things aren't always in focus, and that's okay. And sometimes it might miss like the beginning of someone's dialogue, and that's okay too, because that's what reflects kind of what teenagers are going through. Things are happening really fast. They may not get everything that's happening. They may miss stuff, and that's okay because they're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what would you say it was about the show in general that appealed to you that made you want to be a part of it?
Growing up, I never saw myself reflected on TV or in the movies. And so when I heard what the show was about and I watched a pilot, and I was immediately drawn to it because it represented um, you know, everyone in the LGBTQ community and all the different people of color and women. And I that was not something that I'm used to. And so I just felt like, all right, this is going to be really interesting. It's unique. It's going to be a challenge. And I haven't really cut a lot of high school content either. So it was important for me to kind of push myself to see, would I be able to come at this and watch the performances without kind of projecting my own nostalgia and my own emotions onto it, because it was important to kind of be authentic to their story so that everyone in that community can feel seen and heard.
Yeah, well, this is also a show that is juggling so many different perspectives where, I guess you could say that Chester maybe stands out as kind of a lead because his personality looms so large. But I would say at its heart, it's definitely an ensemble show. Can you talk about balancing all of those different perspectives, making sure that nobody really gets lost in the shuffle, and also having it be confined to 30 minutes? There's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. In Discovery, it's even, gosh, the constraints are even greater, I think, not just in time, but they're also in one location primarily.
Right.
And so for me to kind of be able to make it really interesting and not lose the audience it was always looming in the back of my mind. And Chester is larger than life, like you said, and you can't take your eyes off of him because he's just so magnetic. But during lockdown, you want to know what his fears are. You kind of want to expose that he, has this huge personality, but inside he's really afraid to be alone. He's got his demons as well. And so once we show that with this conversation with Sam, I think one of the ideas was like, okay, well, there's other kids in the room, and you can hear them kind of like very gently whispering in the background, but nothing really bubbles through until like people start getting text on their phone, and that's going to trigger you to kind of turn and look at another child like Greta, who's getting a phone call from her aunt, and so you get a little piece of her and what they're going through, and then you go to Nathan, who's getting a text from his sister, or he's texting his sister, who's like hiding out in the bathroom waiting for her boyfriend to join her. um, so it was just making sure that every single kid around the room um, you know had kind of almost equal time, and I think Ariana might have had the least amount of screen time, but I feel like her lines were so incredible. Her moment of like punking her two dads about, like potentially being shot. I think her moment on screen, even though it was short, I think it was pretty hilarious and left an impression.
For
So
sure.
it's a balancing act.
Yeah. And that episode is the second episode of the series, and first of all, pilot episodes are obviously tough because you have to grab the audience, but then the second episode is where you really have to get people to commit to a show and want them to invest in these characters. How difficult was that aspect for you with how, the tone's already been established in the pilot and then you have to sort of keep up the momentum?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of pressure. They had done the pilot, I think, almost a year before we started shooting the
Mm.
episodes. And one of the things that was important to Daniel Barnes, who's the directing EP of the series, he co-created it with his daughter, Zoe. He wanted every episode to kind of be different, kind of have its own rhythm and own tone. So that was a little liberating, because sometimes you have to try different things to make it interesting. And so it was great that he, kind of allowed all the editors to experiment and, present the episode as we thought it should look. And it was, yeah, it was definitely like, watching the dailies and going with my gut and seeing like what's grabbing me. And hopefully if it's grabbing me, it's grabbing an audience too. So
And then you also do the sixth episode of the season, which is called Wheels on the Bussy. These episode titles are fantastic. It's where the kids are taking the school trip to San Francisco. Can you talk about the unique challenges with that episode? Again, that's another kind of like they're all stuck in the bus, another one location.
Yes, yes. I remember making a joke about that. Like, how did this happen? I mean, these are all just kind of like, you don't have no control of what episodes you're given. And so it just happened that mine was like, okay, everyone's stuck in a room. Now they're all stuck in a bus. Um, it was important to make sure that they didn't feel trapped this time. I mean, they were trapped in episode 2, but this time they were more like just together on their way to an adventure. And I wanted to make sure that that kind of came through, whether it's through um, Riley, like memorizing her fake ID and just kids like kind of talking about what they plan on doing and also kind of showing them forge friendships in a way. Delilah and Naomi weren't necessarily friends before. They were kind of friends, but I think in that trip they kind of bonded a little more because Naomi was so separated from her brother, her twin brother Nathan. So it was, yeah, it was just making sure that you're with the kids all the time, experiencing this through their eyes. And hopefully, people aren't bored. And every once in a while, you'll see this great scenery go outside the bus. So
Yeah.
hopefully that'll keep everybody engaged.
Yeah, that episode definitely has a very exciting energy. It's very charged, I think, just
Yeah.
with them being outside, getting to explore more of the outside world and all that.
Yes.
But one thing I also noticed a few times in that episode is the slowing down in the speed. Like, I think when Riley is watching Greta from inside the diner, it looks like she's a little bit in slow motion walking across the street. And then at the end of the episode, when Sam grabs Chester's arm, it definitely feels like time is slowing down in that moment. Were those moments in the script, or was that a choice you made to have those kind of time slowing down have that effect?
We actually discussed that a lot. I felt it was important to slow it down because that was kind of the moment that Riley realized, like she does like Greta,
Mhm.
and Greta's a special person in her life. So I wanted to make sure that was punctuated, and also with Sam and Chester, their relationship's a little murky, and this was a big moment of Sam reaching out to save Chester in a way, and so I wanted to make sure that we were with Chester and feeling what he was feeling, like feeling his heartbeat and like maybe in his mind, I don't know, this is going through this character's mind, but like if it was me and I had this guy that I was had a crush on just kind of grab me to save me from falling out of my chair, my heart would be beating intensely strong and I would just be like, oh my god, he's touching me. And so that's kind of like what I was going for in that moment. I hope I was successful.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have been there. Um,
Yes.
but I mean, I don't know how involved you are also with establishing and or placing in the music in the show, but I would say that aspect is very well chosen. A lot of hip hop, really gives a sensibility and a tone to the show as well. How involved are you with the music supervisor and sound mixers and other departments on the show?
Oh, this show, I've been very, very collaborative, more on the show with both of those departments than on most, especially with the sound team, which is led by Ruth Edelman over at Technicolor. She was amazing. For the lockdown scene, traditionally when you're shooting a scene, the background extras are not talking. And so in order to build this feeling that there were other students in the room, I had to make sure you hear whispers. Well, traditional sound effect, libraries, they have party wall of adults. And so that wasn't really working. So I had to call them and say, hey, do you have something that kind of sounds like this? And over here, I need a lot of like chaos and commotion when they're like trying to get seated. And so she sent over a bunch of things that just really helped me sell the episode when it was in an editor's cut stage. And that was super helpful. And same with music, we work very closely with the music supervisors to see, okay, this moment is Chester's moment, like he's kind of an old soul, and he would listen to, all kinds of stuff. Like he would be into like Ella Fitzgerald and also, Billie Eilish. So it was fun to kind of come up with playlists for each character and kind of use them, so that they are kind of working with the character's scene at the moment.
Yeah. Well, looking over, just other shows that you've done, especially earlier in your career, you've done a lot of reality shows, unscripted shows.
Mhm.
I was curious what kinds of tools those gave you to kind of help develop your skills with some of your more, scripted shows later on.
Oh gosh, I use some of the methods I've developed in reality I still use every day almost.
Mm,
My approach to cutting scenes is very similar to that of when I was working in reality, where I would watch everything. And so I literally would watch everything from, before they call action, because they always let the camera roll a little bit, and they
mm,
always let the camera roll a little bit after they yell cut, and sometimes they don't yell cut, and then there's like a reset. And most of the time, you can kind of scrub through it very quickly. But if I hear that they're talking, I will listen to all of it and kind of look at the images. And, because I've stolen so many kind of like shots that I can use as reactions. And that directly relates back to my
yeah.
reality days. And music too. Music is a huge thing. You had to do all of your music. And so, and there was no music supervisor. So that was definitely, it kind of, I feel like it put me ahead of the game, I feel.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And then, with these more recent shows with Generation and Insecure, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Little America, all these are different shows with different rhythms to them, but then they also have a bit of a commonality in how, these are main characters who are either outsiders or they're trying to find their place in the world, or they're, going up against society's expectations, things like that. um, is there something about that kind of character or story that appeals to you for one reason or another?
I never actually looked at all the different shows I've done in that way. But yeah, probably. I am always rooting for the underdog.
Mm,
Um, Probably because I, you know, also feel like an underdog, because I think having immigrated here and grown up, I think more now in America than in Taiwan, I don't feel like I belong when I go back home. And yet I'm not sure I quite belong here. For obvious reasons, I wear my race on my face. And so there are going to be times when I'm going to be told I don't belong. But yeah, it's a thing that I feel like most immigrants experience. Once they've become more accustomed to living in the US, they kind of feel like they're in between two worlds. So maybe that's why I identify more with these stories. Uh, yeah, we're just unpacking a lot of stuff right here. I did not
and,
expect that.
and you said before that, like, seeing shows that you maybe, or characters and situations you hadn't quite seen on TV before, maybe that's another part of it as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now you're a Emmy-winning editor. I want to talk about the Emmys since we're an awards website. I was looking back on our interview we did with you last year, actually, and you were talking about your win for Project Greenlight. And since last year, you actually won again for Insecure. I know it was a very different experience because, you know, it was all virtual, but what did that win mean to you, to be winning for that show in particular?
Oh my gosh. I didn't even expect to be nominated. So so that in itself was incredible. And to win also was very unexpected because I was up against such stiff competition. Um, and I think for me, the win was tremendous, mostly because when I decided to switch from reality to scripted, it was a huge risk. I was kind of like doing these big shows in reality genre and, making a really good living. And I decided, hey, I'm just going to switch and start at the bottom. It's okay. I'll do shows that no one's seen for a while, and get paid very little. But, it was worth it to me because I wanted to tell stories that I related to, as we figured out just a few minutes ago. So it was a risk and it took me a long time. And I realized, I'm glad I have the first Emmy because I probably will never get another one ever again. Having started over in a whole new genre where I'm just like, the new person in town trying to, make their way. And so to be nominated, first of all, was huge. And also, I don't know if you know this, but one of my mentors, Steve Rash, who took me under his wing many, many years ago, especially when I switched over to the scripted genre. He was also nominated that year in the same category. It was a little uncomfortable, but also I was kind of like, holy crap, I'm
Yeah.
nominated along with my mentor. That's crazy. He was, told me he was very proud, and we were very happy for each other and we celebrated together. But yeah, so that this win meant so much to me for so many reasons. I love the show, and Issa has been incredible in helping me find my voice, kind of, and yeah, it yeah, I didn't think I'd get here, but I did.
You certainly did, and it was well deserved, I would say.
Well, thank you.
Um, well, for those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and head to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Nena, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.